The freaking Houston detectives originally said that Allstar JR did not have enough for them to prosecute him. But this brand new federal indictment finally explains why the feds refused to let this case die. And after reading every single page, I found the one argument prosecutors keep coming back to over and over again. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why they're still fighting to keep Allstar JR locked up and said, no to bail. States of America versus Jeremy Christopher Ford, a.k.a. Allstar JR. Government's suggestions in opposition to defendant's motion to revoke and amend detention order. The government respectfully requests that this court deny defendant's motion to revoke the magistrate's detention order filed on May 29, 2026, and in support thereof offers the following. 1. Procedural history. On April 17, 2026, Magistrate Judge Yvonne Yeho found probable cause to issue a criminal complaint charging defendant with felon in possession of a firearm in violation of 18 U.S.C. 922G1 and 924A8 that occurred on April 8, 2026 in the Southern District of Texas, DE1. The defendant, a resident of Detroit, Michigan, was located and arrested in Detroit on April 22, 2026, and the following day. Defendant was taken before a magistrate judge in the Eastern District of Michigan, who informed the defendant of his rights, DE4. The United States moved to detain defendant under 18 U.S.C. 3142F1 because the felony charged involved the possession of a firearm as defined in 18 U.S.C. 921 DE4. Defendant elected to have his detention hearing in the Eastern District of Michigan, meaning you said, F it, we ain't got to go to Texas to do this. We just chilling in Detroit. Well, Detroit burned him. So on April 27, 2026, a detention hearing was held before U.S. Magistrate Judge Kimberly G. Altman in the Eastern District of Michigan, whereas defendant was represented by Arthur J. Wise, retained counsel. The government proffered to the court the facts and circumstances surrounding defendant's possession and use of a firearm inside the Confessions restaurant located in Houston, Texas on April 8, 2026, and further introduced confession surveillance video and photographs. The government told the court the following on April 8, 2026. Defendant and a female companion were inside the Confessions restaurant in Houston, Texas when they finished their meal. Defendant and his companion walked toward a bank of elevators. Defendant then returned to the dining room alone and appeared to be talking on his cell phone. A group of individuals approached the defendant in the dining room and a discussion commenced. The discussion turned into an argument. Someone got in between defendant and the group to dispel the disagreement. Two men continued to walk toward defendant and a struggle ensued. Defendant and the men began fighting. Defendant was stripped of his jewelry. They all stumbled as punches were being thrown. During the melee, a firearm fell to the ground. Now, up to this point, they're only setting up the mother flipping stage. But what they try to do next, man, bro, they going in for that gusto. They said this is the foundation of their entire argument. Defendant picked it up and began shooting. Victim 1 was hit in the neck and fell to the floor immediately. And I think that's what's screwing him over, is because they're going to say that he would have been paralyzed from the neck down had that shot been basically placed there to create all the damn damage, but it wasn't. During melee, the firearm fell to the ground. Defendant picked it up and began shooting. Victim was hit in the neck. Victim 1 was hit in the neck and fell to the floor immediately. The government introduced a photograph of Victim 1 and defendant in confessions. The dining room cleared as everyone ran away from defendant. Defendant gave chase and continued to shoot as patrons ran toward the elevators. Victim 2 was shot multiple times in the hand and leg. Individuals in the elevator held it open so Victim 2 could escape. Defendant returned to the dining room where Victim 1 lay motionless on the floor. It says on the bottom part, the detention hearing was recorded in 3 public audio files. Recording the detention hearing are part of the U.S. Eastern District of Michigan case. So they basically have the audio for you to hear this, Judge. Defendant shot Victim 1 again, twice. Defendant's female companion attempted to interact with defendant. Defendant ignored her entreaties and he fired at Victim 1 once more. Defendant walked away from Victim 1 and returned approximately 20 seconds later, still holding the firearm. Defendant pointed the gun at Victim 1, who now appears to be unconscious. And he tried to fire again, but he was out of ammunition. Now it's going on to say what actually happened afterwards is literally just as important. And Allstar JR's mess up continues to be one of the worst that we've seen. Undeterred, defendant pistol whipped the victim and spit on him. Defendant then walked toward the elevators. Defendant paced the floor, wiped down the gun, and hid it in the hostess stand. Defendant then grabbed his car keys from the valet hook and fled in a white Cadillac Escalade. The police arrived to absolute chaos. Victim 1 was unconscious in a pool of blood in the dining room. Victim 2 was in the garage, bleeding profusely from his wounds. Restaurant patrons and employees were running for their lives down flights of stairs and from the elevators. Victim 1 was shot 3 times. He was hit in the neck, back, and chest. He sustained an internal carotid artery injury, a lacerated liver, fractured ribs, and a spinal cord injury that has rendered him paralyzed from the waist down. Victim 2 was shot 5 times in the hand and leg. He underwent surgery to amputate his right index finger and to repair arteries in his leg. Victim 3, a completely innocent bystander, was shot in the ass as he ran from the restaurant. Law enforcement recovered 10 fired shell casings and the firearm defendant used to shoot 3 people, but defendant was nowhere to be found. He ditched the Escalade and boarded a plane to Detroit a day or so after the shooting. Defendant did not wait for the police. Defendant did not render aid to any of the 3 people that he gunned down. Instead, he obstructed justice. He tried to distance himself from the crime by wiping the gun, arguably to conceal, if not destroy, physical evidence such as sweat, skin, fingerprints, or blood to thwart forensic identification. Defendant did not call the police, but did contact the registered owner of the Escalade to warn him that people may be looking for him. When defendant arrived in Michigan, he did not contact law enforcement to report his involvement in the shooting at confessions, but what he did do was taunt and troll his victims over social media. He called out 2 of them by name. The government produced defendant's social media posts. In one post, defendant encourages his followers to enter the Ben10 challenge. Defendant offered to pay $20,000 to the person who best imitated victim 1 laying motionless and being shot while laying on the ground. Defendant also took the time to pen rap lyrics and record a video bragging about the shooting at confessions. And now we get to the real reason why this document was filed and why the goddamn feds say that Allstar JR needs to stay exactly where the hell he is. The government joined pretrial services and requested detention for a defendant based on danger to the community and risk of flight. Yeah, he kind of fucked himself getting on that plane, but whatever. Finally, the government published a video from confessions to show the actions of defendant and others which led to defendant's possession and use of the firearm. Mr. Wise argued that defendant was acting in self-defense when he fired. Mr. Wise proffered to the court that defendant contacted counsel later in the day or the next day and inquired of the attorney, who later inquired of the Houston Police Department. They purportedly indicated it appeared to be stand your ground, and they were not interested in defendant, and he could go home to Michigan. Oh, wow. Mr. Wise stated he spoke with the counsel who confirmed what defendant told him and what was advised. Mr. Wise stated defendant is not going anywhere. He has nowhere to go. He has no travel documents, and he has never left the country. Defendant is in a committed relationship with his person, and they have been together about 2 years. Mr. Wise said that making music is defendant's profession for 10 years, and he seems to be successful at it. At the conclusion of the hearing, Mr. Allman stated the general principles that she set forth in her determination, and the factors she considered when the government requests detention. Judge Altman stated the nature and circumstances of the offense are horrific. Judge Altman further stated that defendant is charged with felony possession of a firearm, and maybe on paper that is not one of the most serious crimes that this court sees. The circumstances of this are very troubling, very violent. Judge Altman said that the video showed defendant at one point shooting indiscriminately because at one point he shot an innocent bystander. I wonder how the hell he shot that person. But anyways, Judge Altman said that the video showed defendant at one point shooting indiscriminately because at one point he shot an innocent bystander. Judge Altman stated that looking at what she saw was deeply troubling. People were terrorized, and they were lucky more people weren't hurt. Judge Altman said the nature and circumstances factor, where defendant was not only possessed but used a firearm, unquestionably clearly weighs in favor of detention. Judge Altman stated that she was really concerned about defendant's dangerousness. Judge Altman was also concerned about defendant's action after shooting by taking to social media and showing the indifference to the victims and pride in his actions. Judge Altman agreed there were no conditions or a combination of conditions she could impose that would reasonably ensure the safety of the community. Judge Altman issued a written order following the hearing by finding clear and convincing evidence that no condition or combination of conditions of release will reasonably assure the safety of any other person in the community. In reaching her decision to detain, defendant Judge Altman stated the following reasons for her detention. 1. The offense charged is a crime of violence, a violation of 1951, a federal crime of terrorism, or involved a minor victim or a controlled substance, firearm, explosive, or destructive device, aka a gun. 2. The weight of the evidence against the defendant is strong. The defendant is subject to lengthy period of incarceration if convicted. Defendant's prior criminal history, defendant's history of violence or use of weapons, defendant's prior violations of probation, parole, or supervised release. Based on the foregoing, Judge Altman ordered defendant detained pending trial. On May 13, 2026, a federal grand jury seated in Houston, Texas, returned an indictment charging defendant with felony possession of a firearm, 18 U.S.C. 922G1 and 924A8. Defendant appeared for an arraignment on the indictment on May 22, 2026, along with defendant's new attorney, John Michael Helms Jr. Defendant was remanded to custody following the hearing according to the minute entry for these proceedings. On May 29, 2026, defendant filed a motion to revoke the magistrate judge's detention order, stating that defendant can show there are conditions that the court may impose that would guarantee his appearance and the safety of the public. Defendant further alleges that he has evidence and information that his defense counsel understands was not present to the magistrate judge in Detroit. However, said evidence and information is not stated within defendant's motion to revoke the magistrate's detention order. For the following reasons, defendant's motion should be denied. And when you're doing something like this, you have to produce something new. But the feds go point by point by point by point by point to basically say this is the most important part of the whole entire motion. 2. Analysis. The court should deny defendant's motion because the defendant does not provide a sufficiently compelling reason to revisit Judge Altman's decision. 18 U.S.C. 3142F provides that the hearing may be reopened before or after a determination by the judicial officer. At any time before trial, if the judicial officer finds that information exists that was not known to the movement, my bad, that's what y'all be saying. I know, Jasmine, I know. Movement at the time of the hearing. And that has a material bearing on the issue, whether there are conditions of release that will reasonably assure the appearance of such person as required and the safety or any other person in the community. The court may reject a motion to reopen because the evidence to be presented is not new or because it would not be material. United States versus Hare. The defendant's motion for review of magistrate judge's detention order states the defendant believes there are conditions the court could impose that would guarantee his appearance and the safety of the public. And further, this evidence and information was not presented to the magistrate judge in Detroit. The defendant was not stated in his motion. Defendant has not stated in his motion what new information now exists that was not known to the movement at the time of his detention hearing. And therefore, this court cannot review the defendant's claims and consider if that new information would justify reopening his detention hearing. The defendant instead requests a new hearing, which does not rise to the standard for reopening his detention hearing and further frustrates judicial economy. And this one right here, the final nail in the coffin, essentially says, Judge, agree with the other judge and agree with us and hold this shit up, because they do have one particular point of new shit not introduced because they're holding it in their goddamn back pocket. All the facts Judge Altman cited when explaining her original decision to detain defendant as a danger to the community are still present. After a review of the restaurant surveillance videos, which showed defendant firing 10 rounds from a firearm in a busy restaurant, along with the defendant's social media posts and messages after the shooting, which taunted 2 of the victims and showed a callous disregard for their well-being, Judge Altman determined that there were no conditions of bond that she could impose to keep the community safe. The defendant is a resident of Detroit, Michigan, a city that is 1,100 miles away from Houston, Texas, and even that large of a geographical distance between the defendant and the victims in this case, Judge Altman still determined the defendant is a danger to the community. The evidence is still overwhelming and no facts have been produced to change Judge Altman's detention determination. Defendant represents a clear danger to public safety that cannot be reasonably mitigated by any condition or combination of conditions this court can craft. Because the dangers Judge Altman describes still exist and no new information has been produced that was not known to the defendant at the time of his detention hearing in Detroit. Defendant's detention remains unwarranted. 3, conclusion. Wherefore, based on the foregoing, the United States requests that the court deny defendant's motion without further hearing. I know this is a longer video and I try to make it as interesting as I could, but the damn filing reads as a story, don't it? So the issue here is Allstar JR was going to get away with it. Had he never fucking trolled people, had he never decided to show his ass, they wouldn't even filed it. He would actually be smooth, free, and in the clear. The goddamn feds are kind of lying, though, by saying, hey, man, this is already a crime, but y'all didn't think it was a crime until the police said, to the Houston detectives, pardon me, say, we ain't doing a damn thing. So now I'm wondering, y'all said he lost his mind. It looked like he went effing crazy. So couldn't one argue crime of passion? I'm just saying. Can somebody go temporary insanity and all of this shit? Because the reason why he's being charged is essentially when he walked back, but it wasn't when he walked back. It was the story that y'all painted to basically screw him. Now, I'm going to be fair, square, obvious, and honest. He's still screwed because the feds nabbed his ass. When they said that man pop, and wiped it all off, boy, that right there, that's the part where the feds go, what the hell did you do that for? Because if it was truly on some shit where you just did a crime of passion and you weren't thinking and all that and everything, why wipe the damn gun off? He almost would have been in the clear had he not wiped the gun off. Had he just shot the damn gun and just threw it on the ground after it was out of ammunition, then cool. But we shall see. I'm going to say what I've been saying, man, and that's simply this fact and this case in point that Allstar JR would have got away with it had he not ran his flat. Allstar JR is only in trouble because he started trolling and taunting individuals. Allstar JR, at the end of it, can blame himself 50% of it. 50%. The other is goddamn James Prince Jr. and the rest of everybody else. How the hell all these people are not charged blows my mind. But it is what it is, man. Subscribe, turn that bell, stay notified, and share to keep your people aware. I will catch you on that next one. But until then, click right here to see how the internet is saying Pooh Shiesty has jury selection today. There are court documents to absolutely prove that that's true. But there's court documents to prove why that's not true and why the hood lawyer got to do his dance. I'm just trying to go viral for my little dance. Click right here for that video or click right here for the playlist, and I will catch y'all in the next one.